Okay, so first, a quick note about the test. Again, if you got here just a little bit late, all of the numbers about your test and your grade right now in this course are on the very back of the last page, and they're written in the order that I've written here on the whiteboard. So the most important thing for you is this course average and test average, course average and letter grade right now. There is an opportunity to retake or do a makeup exam 3 or exam 2. But I'm going to wait for a few more minutes before I talk about that. I want to make sure as many people are here to hear that as possible. In terms of the overall class performance on this test, you guys know the Charles Dickens story, A Tale of Two Cities? All right, so I had a whole bunch of folks that are over here in the 90s, A's, wonderful. And then I had a whole bunch of folks that were less than 75 and not a whole lot of stuff in between. So, so if you're in the first group, wonderful. If you're in the second group, we'll talk about the opportunity you'll have to retake this test, okay? The overall the mean of everybody that took the test was a 73. But like I said, just about everybody is on one of the extremes or the other. Okay, so we'll talk about makeup stuff in just a little bit. We'll pop up the calendar real quick. No homework was due today. We have only 3 more days of new material to cover. So today, Friday, and then Monday. And as of Monday, we are done covering new material in this class. So hopefully that'll be a relief for some of you. Then Wednesday, 1 week from today, there's this optional makeup exam day. We'll talk about it. And then 2 days of review, and then we'll talk about this business about the letters. Any questions on the calendar right now? Okay. So let's come back here to the top of page 242. And can we go to Caroline? Sorry, Catherine. Yes, please.
In this lesson, we simplify expressions that involve monomial.
Okay, great. And we'll go to Caroline. Okay, so we've got x to the third raised to the 4th power. X to the third raised to the 4th power. All right, so we're going to write out a lot of stuff. At some point, you might be tempted to look at the answer and say, oh, there's a shortcut here, and you're probably right about that shortcut. But again, I'm going to encourage you not to look for shortcuts, or at least not to try to memorize shortcuts at this stage. You will be asked to memorize plenty in your next algebra class. Right now, we're just trying to give some context, some rationale for why these things work the way that they do. So x cubed to the 4th. All right, I see something to the 4th. I can write it this way. Agree? I have 4 copies of what's in the parentheses. Okay, now there's a big blank line, a long blank line. What are we going to do with each x cubed? We're going to make it x, x, x. Yes? All right, so this step is completely optional, but for right now, I want everybody to write it. I think I've got it right. What is this really equal to? X to the? Yeah, how many x's do we have there? We have 12 of them. Yes? X to the 12. Okay, so again, you're probably just saying, well, hey, Ian, there's just a shortcut, right? What do we do with the powers? You multiply them. You're absolutely right. But it's very tempting to look at those powers and say, oh, it's x to the 7th, right? 3 plus 4 is 7. You can add them and get 7. And what about this guy? It's tempting to look at that and say 7 or 12. And I don't want you to be guessing. I don't want you to flip a coin and decide whether it's adding or multiplying. I want you to just write it out and get it right every time this semester, and then worry about memorizing some rules next semester. What's the answer to this problem down here? This is x to the 7th, because you envision, and this is the part where I don't need you to write it all out. Envision 3 x's for the first thing, 4 more x's sitting next to it. How many x's altogether? It's x to the 7th. But like I said, I don't want you to just guess and say, okay, and here we add, here we multiply. I want you to get it right every time. All right, let's try number 2 together. Okay, so we'll put this off on the side. All right, so I'm going to copy that 3w. And then what are we going to write 3 times? Negative 2w squared. I'm going to insist that you write a little dot for multiplication there. 3 of them. Okay, what's the next symbol after we dealt with the cube? Is that subtract w to the 5th? And now what are we writing? Negative 4w, negative 4w. Right, it's squared, write it twice, insert some dots for multiplication. Okay, so now we're going to skip over that step where we write everything out. We've written a lot of stuff out. We could go further, right? Every time we see w squared, we could write ww. But let's save ourselves a little bit of writing and just try to envision where this is headed. So I have 2 terms here separated by a big subtraction sign, which I will highlight right here. Everything in the front is multiplied. Everything in the back is multiplied, but the big subtraction sign separates those 2 things out. So let's just look in the front of the multiplication sign. All this stuff in here is what we're looking at. We're going to imagine in our heads rearranging so that all the numbers are in the front and all the w's are in the back. So all the numbers, 3, negative 2, negative 2, negative 2. What am I doing with all those numbers to put them together? We're multiplying them. It's all multiplication. So we were doing 3 times negative 2 is negative 6 times another negative 2 times another negative 2, negative 24. Okay, so we've handled the numbers. I'm just going to green highlight every term with the W. And the question is, if you envision all these W's written out, every W squared is really WW right next to each other. How many W's do you have altogether? I have 7 altogether. Everybody see that? First one is a 1, and then 2 more, and then 2 more, and then 2 more. So W7. Good. So all of this is now smushed all together. What's the next symbol? Subtraction sign. I'll highlight it again in yellow. All right, and then we're playing the same game on the end. So first imagine grouping all the numbers together. So I see negative 4 and another negative 4. So that's negative 8. 12. What are we doing with those numbers? Multiplying. What do we get? 16. And now I'll highlight in blue all the terms with W. These, the second 2 are W squares. Oh, I apologize. Well, they are the way I've written them, but I've written them wrong. Thank you, Dwight. Just W's. Okay, so imagine 5 W's next to each other, and then another W and another W. How many altogether? 7. So I'll underline all of this has been smushed together to get that. Okay, and then the last stage for this one. Normally addition, or in this case subtraction, is really picky. And you can only add and subtract things when they look exactly the same letters to exactly the same powers. But most of the time you cannot add. Like you can't add x squared plus x. Nothing we can do there. Can we subtract these 2 terms? We can, because the same exponent, w to the 7th. So you have negative 24 of this thing, w to the 7th. And then you're subtracting 16 more of that same thing. And all together we get negative 40. What happens to those powers? Stays 7. 3 apples plus 2 apples is 5 apples. Doesn't change. So that's our answer. Questions on this? Okay, So before we do the classwork, let me just talk a little bit about what's coming up here in terms of this makeup test. So again, the optional makeup day is 1 week from today. Here are your choices for that optional makeup day, Wednesday next week. You can choose to retake exam 2. You can choose to retake exam 3. Can't do both, you got to pick. Or you could choose to call that a day off from our math class. Completely up to you. Now, in terms of your choice, again, you've got your test grade that you've just handed back. And you have your other test number 2 grade. Seems like probably you're going to want to pick whichever one is lower and replace that one. There's no risk to doing one of these retake exams. If you do worse on the retake day, I don't penalize you at all. I'm just going to pick the bigger of the 2 test grades. So there's no penalty for coming in on that day. That said, grading exams is not the most fun thing in my life at this point. And so if you're going to come in and do a retake, I would ask that you take it seriously, that you study, that you prepare, that you don't just come in here willy-nilly and take it and say, well, you know, if I do worse, then that's okay, there's no penalty. All that's true, but it's my time. And so if you want to take it seriously, please do come in, please study, please work hard, practice, go through the yellow QEF documents. But please do take it seriously. It's no, it's Wednesday next week. I've been saying Friday, but it's Wednesday coming up, 1 week from today. Okay. Any questions on that day? And again, if you're happy with your exam 2 and exam 3 test scores, you don't need to come in. All right. So what I'm going to do is pass around a piece of paper which has each of your names on it, and I'm going to ask you to find your name and circle whether you'd like to retake exam 2 or exam 3 or neither. Okay. Now, you are not committing 100%. You can come in on that day and change your mind, but I'm trying to get a sense of how many copies I should print out, and I would like to not waste a lot of paper. Okay, so that is that. Yeah, just pass it around. Everybody's going to circle. Yeah, just let me know if you change your mind. I'm looking for a rough estimate right now. So circle something right now. Z. The numbers on the very back of the last page are represented over here on the whiteboard, Z. They're in the order that's up here. Okay. All right. Next thing I want to say is I do have extra copies of the exam that you guys took on Monday. So if you are thinking about retaking exam 3 and you'd like to practice, I have blanks up here. Okay, and the other thing that I want to say for folks who are looking for more practice is that next semester, when Sandy and I teach this class again, we're going to be reprinting all of the blue packets, and we're going to be reprinting the green homework packet, which means we have extras that are just going to go into the recycle bin at the end of the semester. They're sitting in those boxes right over there. So at any point right now or during this class or at the end of class, you want to just get up and grab one or all copies of these things, please do, because they're of no use to anybody else after this semester, all right? So if you want more practice, you can grab any extra of the blues or the green required homework packet. There's practice exams and quizzes and all the blues, right? They're all up here, so help yourself. Okay, so classwork begins right there, again on page 242. Give it a shot, raise the flag if I can help.